Vine's heart skipped a beat as she stood outside the washroom door, her hand frozen on the handle. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Jungkook, her rival and nemesis, speaking her name in the washroom, and the voice seemed more like a moan than just a small, simple talk he might be having with himself. It didn't make any sense. Jungkook and Vine were working on a project together because they were forced to do so that they can avoid some allegations towards both of their companies being rivals of each other. Although they were, but they didn't want any rumors to spread related to it, as it will be bad for both of them. They decided to do a project together to prevent such rumors. It was late at night, and Vine came in his office to talk about some project related issues when she got to know that he was in his office as well. But when she arrived, she didn't find him there, so she decided to knock the bathroom's door to ask if he was inside. But as soon as she got close to it, she heard this, her own name, being moaned by Jungkook. But why? She slowly turned the handle and pushed the door open, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of him. And then she saw him, standing in front of the sink, his eyes closed and his head thrown back in ecstasy. "Jungkook," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He opened his eyes and turned to face her, a look of shock and playfulness on his face. "Fine," he said, his gait and eyes drunk. He was reeking of alcohol. "Jungkook, I was just thinking about you, and you came." He smirked. "What are you doing here?" he asked as he leaned in on the sink again, throwing his head back, closing his eyes. "Vine, what are you doing here, I should ask? You are so drunk and let's get out of here first." She went towards him to give him a shoulder so that he could get outside. But as soon as she went close to him, he pulled her from her wrist and pinned her on the flat surface of the wall instantly. Vine was shocked and her eyes widened as she was pulled back by him. Looking at his drunk eyes and hearing his heartbeat because of the closeness between them, it made her stay. It made her want to stay and go with the flow as she kept staring in his hazel mixed eyes, mixed with signs of drinking. Jungkook leaned closer, his hands at the side of her head, caging her inside him completely. Their eyes locked, the air between them heavy with tension and unspoken desires. Vine's heart was pounding in her chest as she struggled to find her voice, to push him away, but there was something about the way he was looking at her that made her hesitate. His gaze softened, a hint of vulnerability shining through the drunken haze in his eyes. "Jungkook, you need to let me go," Vine managed to say, her voice wavering slightly as she tried to keep her composure. But instead of releasing her, Jungkook's grip on her wrist tightened slightly, his other hand moving to cup her cheek gently. "I can't," he whispered, his breath warm against her skin. "I've been wanting to do this for so long." And before Vine could protest or comprehend his words, his lips were on hers in a searing kiss that sent shockwaves through her body. For a moment, Vine was lost in the sensation of Jungkook's lips on hers, her heart racing with the unexpected turn of events. She did enjoy the moment, to say the least. She did want to do this as well, but maybe not as bad as him. But now that he made the first move, she didn't want to push him back. Or worse, she wanted to kiss him back. But then reality came crashing back, as she knew that he was just drunk. What if he regrets it after he's sober? That was the only reason she pushed him away, her heart racing and her chest tight with emotion. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "I thought we were just working on this project." "I know," Jungkook interrupted, his voice shaky and filled with passion. "But I can't control myself around you, Vine. You drive me crazy. I'm sorry." Vine stared at him, her expression a mix of shock, anger, and confusion. She had never felt this way about anyone before, and she didn't know how to react. But as she looked into his eyes, she felt a spark of something deep inside her, a connection that she couldn't deny, an honesty that she couldn't imagine could be false. As she kept staring at his eyes, she couldn't find any dishonesty. He looked so serious about it, but she didn't want to have hope just because of this, because the reality could be different. But she can try. Vine, why are you suddenly saying words like that? You might regret it when you're sober, so save them for someone else. She said and tried to move away from him, but he held her from her waist and closed the distance between them, his chest colliding with her breasts, and she could feel tingles on her waist right where he was holding her. He stared deep into her eyes and said, "Trust me, this is the only thing I will never regret doing." "Jungkook, even if I drank, my words are real and I won't back down later. Because I've wanted to do this for so long. It's not just today, and I don't drink daily." Vine looked at him, not believing what he's saying, but she so badly wanted to believe him. Slowly she reached up and placed her hand on his cheek, mirroring his earlier gesture. "Do you mean that?" Vine asked. "Do you really feel this way about me?" Jungkook looked into her eyes, his face serious and his expression filled with sincerity. For the first time in their professional relationship, Vine saw something genuine and unmistakable in his gaze. "Yes," he replied, his voice steady. "You wanna try me tonight, if you don't believe me?" He whispered in her ear, sending shivers down her spine with his husky voice. Vine's heart swelled with a mix of emotions, surprise, desire, and a hint of vulnerability. She had always kept her feelings locked away, but Jungkook's gestures here were undeniable. As she leaned in closer, their lips met in a kiss that was slow and passionate, filled with a deep connection that had been building between them for so long. Their tongues danced together, exploring each other's mouths with a heat that matched the fire inside their hearts. Vine's hands began to roam, tracing the lines of Jungkook's body, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers. He was strong, yet gentle, and his touch sent shivers down her spine. Time seemed to stand still as they lost themselves in the moment. As they pulled away, Vine looked into Jungkook's eyes, her heart racing with the intensity of their connection. "I think I believe you now," she whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. "But we can't let anyone find out about this. We swore to work together for the sake of our companies." Jungkook nodded, his expression still filled with passion and a hint of regret. "I understand," he said, his voice low and hoarse. "This will have to stay between us. As long as I have you, it doesn't really matter." Vine smiled at his words and Jungkook kissed the back of her ear softly. Fine. Should we get back to work now? Jungkook, not tonight. Let me celebrate tonight. Vine. Celebrate what? You. There was a silence between them for a moment before Jungkook broke it with a crooked grin, pulling Vine into a tight embrace. His warmth enveloped her, and for a moment, all worries and doubts melted away. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, feeling the beating of their hearts in sync. As they held each other close, Vine couldn't help but feel a sense of contentment wash over her. Despite the uncertainties that lay ahead, she knew that she wanted to cherish this moment with Jungkook. Thank you for being here, Vine murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook brushed a strand of hair away from her face, his eyes filled with tenderness. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. In that quiet embrace, they found solace in each other's presence. The night stretched out before them, full of endless possibilities and unspoken promises, as they stood, lost in each other's loves.